signed a plea deal where he will get life in prison, no parole. There will be no chance of him appealing this whatsoever. And the Gonzalez family have been very vocal about this. They are not happy with it. They felt like they were shafted. They felt like Brian Koberger should have had a day in trial where he would be found guilty and then ultimately get the worst possible sentence ever, which is the death penalty. And there are some other family members as well. I think I read that Xana Kernodle's aunt was also very upset about this plea deal. But there are other family members who haven't really been as vocal in the news, but there's a new docuseries that dropped on Amazon, and we got to hear from the Chapin family. We got to hear from the Mogan family. We also got to hear from really close friends of the victims and some of their family members that were just, I don't know. I mentioned this yesterday, but when I was watching the docuseries, I really liked the perspective that they took. It was very different than the other documentary that came out on Dateline. Dateline did a really huge focus on Brian Koberger, his background, some of the stuff that people were alleging about him, people that met him in passing, people that worked with him. And so it was a major focus on Brian Koberger because a lot of people were wondering, who the heck is Brian Koberger? Where did this guy come from? What was his motive? Why did he do this? But with this docuseries on Amazon, they did a huge focus on the family members and the friends. And honestly, it was really sad. Each episode that passes by was just really sad. It was really sad to see how the family members and the friends went through so much. Not only are you dealing with someone that you loved, someone that's really close to you, that was brutally murdered at a very young age, when they had a whole life ahead of them, but to deal with that and then to also deal with social media, to deal with people harassing them, the media coming after them, to deal with all the people with the theories and basically, pointing their fingers like, oh, maybe they did it. Maybe there was an affair going on. So it was pretty interesting to see this perspective, and I think it's really important for people to take a look and watch it. So if you guys don't have Amazon Prime, I'm going to be recapping all 4 episodes, but if you do have it, check it out. I do think it was nice to watch it. Hi, Patty. How are you doing today? Devastating Details. I have not seen it yet. Hello, Offrin. Hey, Michael. How's it going? Morton. Hello, hello. Morning from Australia. Just starting off my day. Oh, it's really early in Australia right now, isn't it? Like super early. Hi, Go Lucky. How are you doing today? Hello, hello. Hi, Aisha. I hope you guys are doing well. And we are streaming 2 days in a row. Yesterday, we streamed Donna Adelson's hearing on Friday. So we're currently covering Donna Adelson, Corey Richins. They're both going to have their trial in the next half year. And then Brian Koberger plea deal. We're going to have the sentencing next week and Lori Vallow sentencing as well. So those are some of the cases that we're covering. But I wanted to jump back to Brian Koberger before we do the sentencing stream next week, because the new docuseries came out last Friday and I watched all 4 episodes. I thought it was pretty good. Nick says BK's a creepy incel. He's like Elliot Rogers meets Bundy. A lot of people, when they saw Brian Koberger walking to the arraignment hearing, they were like, wow, this guy looks scary. Intense eyes, big, looming, kind of like, I don't know. I saw him and I was like, ooh, he looks kind of like, he looks kind of creepy, but I didn't want to think too much into his looks. Because, you never want to judge a book by its covers, but yeah, like every time you would see him at the hearings, he just like had like some very intense eyes, but subsequent to that, all the other hearings, he would just be sitting there and I didn't really notice too much from him from then on. But yeah, I would say it was definitely some, really intense eyes when we first saw him. All right, guys. So the docuseries is broken up into 4 parts. And like I said, we've never heard from the family members of especially Madison Mogan's family, Ethan Chapin's family. Xana Kernodle's family is not in this docuseries, but I don't know if they've been vocal elsewhere. I don't think so. Aside from the aunt being really upset about the plea deal, and then the Gonzalez family, they are not in this docuseries as well. So I would actually wonder why. They have been very vocal throughout advocating for their daughter. So the first episode of One Night in Idaho, that's what the title is. Essentially, they talk about how Moscow is a very safe town. It's a town where it's a college town, and they have a collage of like social media videos of all the friends and these four students. They went to Idaho to pursue, education. And so as we are going through each of and every of the friends, people are wondering why kill them? Was it a hatred towards women? Um, why them? Why choose these four students? Was it something that was random? Was it targeted? And they actually also talk about how they were getting death threats, which is really surprising. You would think that why would the family members of the victims, why would they be getting death threats? It's really crazy. We get into Madison Mogen's mom. Her name is Karen Laramie. She talks about how she remembered dropping Madison off at school, during the first day. And she talks about how the background with her is that she was a very young mom when she had Madison. And I think Madison is her only child, which makes it, even more devastating. Then we go through a photo collage of, Madison growing up. And then we look over at her stepfather. His name is Scott Laramie. And he met Madison when she was 3 years old. But I would say, at that point, you're kind of considered probably your real dad. If you've raised someone since they were 3 years old, that's being a part of their life for a very long time. They talk about how Madison met Kaylee at a very young age, and they were very inseparable. They were essentially sisters, they were tied at the hips, and the family members, they got along with each other. They applied to the same college, which is the University of Idaho, and they wanted to probably spend the next, 20 years, or not 20 years, the next years in the 20s together at least. The mom was talking about how she thought that Madison would be safe. And, it's just really sad because you send your kids away. You think that they're going to get their education, they're going to learn and graduate at some point and start their own life of their own, right? They talk about how, they were, the Madison and Kaylee, they were living, they were having very fun in college, okay? They were living the sorority life, making the most out of their, your freedom at that point, essentially. Because at that point, you're not under your parents' roof anymore. You don't have curfew. You can do whatever you want, sort of. And you start to make new friends and you're in a different environment. So they definitely had fun. It pans over to some more friends. There's a Phoebe. Her name was, Phoebe. And then there was an Emily. There's an Ashen. These are all friends. Phoebe talks about how Kaylee was someone who was a prankster. She would pull a lot of pranks on people. She was a very fun, loving, a silly gal type of person. Xana, they mentioned that Xana was a wild child. Xana had a music list that everyone always loved. She knew what kind of music that everyone would like. She would be the one who would be, I guess, the DJ at the parties. Ethan was a triplet, which I thought was pretty cool. They were a triplet, and we learned this recently. I didn't know that Ethan was really tall because in the pictures that I saw with Ethan, I couldn't really tell. I was like, oh, Ethan could look like he'd be maybe less than 6 feet, maybe 5'8", 5'9", or something. But Ethan's actually 6'4", pretty wild. But they're a triplet. There's Ethan, brother Hunter, and then their sister Maisie. They're from Mount Vernon, Washington, and Ethan majored in communications, I believe. Now, they focus on Ethan's family. So again, Ethan is a triplet. There's Hunter, there's Maisie, and they essentially say that Ethan's the type of person who was the leader of the family. Ethan's mom's name is Stacy Chapin, and their dad, his dad, Jim. They talked about how Xana lived on King Street for about 2 years. So I think I think she's the eldest, maybe. Xana lived there for 2 years, and then, I think, Ethan was, I think that was his freshman year. They talk about how King Street was essentially a party place. I mean, we saw the body cam footages of police being called because it was too loud and the neighbors were like, hey, get the police over there. Tell those kids to turn the music down. But what I didn't know was the King Road neighborhood was actually these houses that the university purchased so the students can live there. So they have housing for the students. They have the fraternities there, the sororities there. I thought it was just a neighborhood. And then you just had regular people living there as well. So it seems like it was a bunch of houses purchased by the university. And then you guys remember how I think a year later they tore down the house. It makes sense now why the university decided to tear down the house, because you have all the surrounding houses nearby. that are lived by other university students. Yeah, seeing that house every day boarded up with the caution tape around it, it is very sad. And then we get to know more about who actually lived around that area, because every morning they woke up, they look out the window, they see that fucking house standing there. Because I remember hearing about how when they were tearing down the house, and I was like, oh, why would you do that? Why not just wait until the trial's over, Because what if there's like some sort of evidence you have to look through, or pictures or something like that? But I can see why the university ultimately decided to tear down the house a year later. It talks about Hunter Johnson, who was one of the guys that stumbled upon the victims the next day. I think his girlfriend's name is Emily. They talk about Dylan, who was the roommate. Dylan was also part of the sorority as well. I got my notes here. Now, you guys ever met a couple like this? A couple where you feel like the girlfriend and the boyfriend are literally the same person, just different genders. That's how they describe Ethan and Xana. They said that they had the same vibes. They're basically the same person, just different bodies. It goes over to November 6th, November 5th, November 6th, which is before the murders happened. And that was Parents' Weekend. Luckily, because of Parents' Weekend, some of the parents were able to come in and visit their kids, their school. And for example, one of the family members, I think it was Ethan's parents. Was it Ethan's parents? I forgot which parents it was. I'm sorry. I don't have the note here. But one of the family members, essentially, they left Sunday morning, and they basically looked at each other. They're like, wow, we did it. We're done. Like, we're good. The kids are happy. Everyone's doing good, and they're in college right now. But they didn't know, or literally they know, that 7 days later, well, their lives would all be taken away. So we go to 11:45 a.m. This is the morning after the murders. Hunter talks about how he slept over at Emily's apartment, and then all of a sudden they get a phone call from Dylan. Again, Dylan is one of the surviving roommates, and Dylan's basically telling them that, hey, something weird happened last night. I don't know if I dreamed it. I'm just really scared. I'm in the basement right now. And so when you're getting a phone call like that, you're probably just thinking, well, it's nothing, not a big deal, because this was a town where people did not lock their doors, which is crazy to me, because I think no matter where you live in, safe, whatever, always lock your doors, man. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. But there are people that I grew up with that did not lock their doors, so I can understand that sentiment that if it carries over from your childhood into your adult life. But I'm like, nah, you better be locking your doors. Wait, I'm curious though. One in chat, if you guys don't lock your doors, or if you grew up not locking your doors. 2 in chat if you're like me, you're like, no, you're always locking the doors. And then 3 if sometimes you lock your doors. That would be really surprising. I don't know. We always locked our doors no matter what. And then it goes over to 11:58 a.m. when the 911 call was made. Again, we heard the transcript of we read the transcript of the 911 call. We read the transcript of the 911 call, and then we heard the 911 call as well. And essentially, these kids, I'm going to say kids because, they're in the early 20s. Technically they're not kids, but I'm going to refer them as kids anyways. They're essentially saying that they don't know what happened. Hunter Johnson apparently said that there was no pulse. Now, remember how when we initially read the transcript, we're like, why would they say someone's unconscious? And then we went to 911 call, same thing. Like, why would you say someone's unconscious, especially if someone was stabbed? There's probably blood everywhere. It seems like what happened was that Hunter was the one who saw the crime scene, and he was trying to shield the others. And so instead of being like, oh my God, they're all stabbed to death, they're all dead and bloody, he told everyone to get the fuck out of the house, call 911, and then just say there was an unconscious person. So now it all makes sense as to why they, instead of saying, oh my God, everyone's dead, they're stabbed, there's blood everywhere. It makes sense to me now why you would kind of minimize it, because you're trying to minimize the tragedy for the other people that were around. So I think at this point, there's someone named Ava who was also there, was outside. They talked about how Emily was crying. So the people that came over, I think, was Hunter. So there's 2 Hunters, actually. Ethan's brother's name is Hunter, and then Ethan's friend is also named Hunter. So don't get it mixed up. But Hunter came over, Emily came over, and I think maybe the third person was Ava at some point. But Dylan was basically outside. She was crying as well. She was saying that she couldn't believe that someone would do this. At this point, they don't really know the status. They all know that Xana is unconscious, but they don't know, the status with Ethan. And at some point, they're like, "Oh shit! Wait, what about Maddie? And what about um, what was the other one? Kaylee, Madison and Kaylee." And so, because Madison and Kaylee were not responding, people were like, "Oh, I wonder if something happened to them as well." Hunter was amazing for this part. Yeah, I think so. 2, 2, 1. Oh my God, I got to one here. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Yeah, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. In rural Vermont, we never locked our doors, but in Jersey, I have everything locked and bolted up. Fresh Airs for Dead People. I'm quoting Morbid Podcast, best podcast ever. Highly recommend. Oh, I've never heard of that podcast yet. Thanks for recommending. You're in the country in Australia though. Gotcha. What about the doggy door? Jody Arias crawled through that. No, we don't do doggy doors in here. Okay. Yeah. Jody's not the only one to be crawling through the doggy doors. Okay. There was another person that crawled through the doggy door as well. To break into their boyfriend's house or stalk them or something like that. But yeah, Jody's not the only one. I would do no doggy door. Okay. Unless you have like a little doggy, like a little chihuahua, maybe, a little tiny doggy door. So at this point, Hunter Chapin, so the triplet brother, walks over and he says that when he arrived, he could see everyone's faces and it seems like the world just ended. He goes into the scene where everyone's at and he's basically asking, "Where's Ethan?" Someone tells him that Ethan's dead. And so Hunter's telling the other Hunter that I think Ethan and Xana, I think they were murdered last night. And it's quite interesting to see Hunter Chapin's interview because as he's talking about it, he's smiling, he's laughing, but you can tell that it's how he comforts himself, which people do that. Sometimes when you're trying to process something, even in retrospect, months later, years later, he was smiling and laughing, but it's not because he found the whole thing jovial and funny. It's because, that's just how he was just still processing it, even years later. So Hunter Chapin's like, "Okay, well, I need to call the sister." And he calls the sister and the sister's like, "Hey, what's up? What's going on?" And he's saying that, "Hey, you need to come over here. Like, you just have to come over here. I can't tell you what's happening right now, but just come over here." At this point, they go over to Hunter, Maisie's, and Ethan's mom. And she talks about how she was at the grocery store. And at that point, one of her sons call her and says, "Ethan's not here." And she's like, "What are you talking about? Just go get him." He's like, No. Ethan's not here. Which I could totally see that as well. Because when you're trying to process something that's so traumatic, instead of just thinking of the worst case scenario, like, "Hey, Ethan's dead," you would just say, "He's not here anymore. I don't know. He's not here anymore." And so the mom was really confused. And at some point, Ethan says that, "No, he's not on this earth anymore." And so the mom says that, she just left her grocery cart. She went in the car and then she called her husband and said that Ethan was killed. I can't imagine getting news like this when you're kind of out and about. Apparently she said she was at the grocery store and she was talking to someone that she knew. So I don't know if that person was still there when she got the phone call or if that person had already walked off. But yeah, super, super, super sad. So we go back to 1122 King Road and all the kids are out there. They're at the driveway. They say that law enforcement is not talking to them. They were sitting there for a very long time. They weren't getting any new information. They knew that Ethan and Xana were not alive. And because these group of friends, they were so close with each other, they had their, I'm assuming maybe they had like the locations on, maybe on Snapchat or something like that. But they were saying that Kaylee and Madison, their phone was pinging inside. So that's when they were starting to wonder what happened to those two. Did something happen to them as well? So now we go over to Maddie's boyfriend, Jake, who, by the way, apparently people were pointing their fingers at him too. Because I guess like when murders like this happen, you always think, oh, it's someone that's close to them. It's probably someone that's, maybe their spouse, significant other, something like that. But Madison's boyfriend Jake was essentially saying that, like, it was wondering what was going on in Moscow. They think that Xana is dead. I think Maddie's mom was the one who called. I think Maddie's mom was the one who called Moscow Police Department, because at that point they were starting to. Oh, here's what happened. Maddie's boyfriend Jake called Maddie's mom. That's right. And then was asking her, hey, do you know what's going on in Moscow? I think Xana is dead. And so the mom gets those horrible news and she calls Moscow Police Department, but they can't give her an update. They can't tell her anything. And so it goes over to her husband, Scott. And Scott was like saying, oh, it's probably nothing. It's probably nothing at all. At that point, they're probably just in denial, or they probably just think it's not a big deal. So they're like, hey, let's just go down. Let's drive there together. We'll pick up Maddie and let's go get lunch. And so again, they call law enforcement on the way there to confirm if there was an active homicide. And law enforcement says, yes, there is. And so they're still thinking, okay, well, nothing's wrong with Kaylee, nothing's wrong with Madison, and they're just going to go and pick the two girls up, and we're just going to console them because of what happened to Xana and what happened to Ethan. But then all of a sudden, which is so fucking wild to me, because they're the friends that are there, they're not getting updates, the family members are not getting updates. All of a sudden, the University of Idaho sends out this alert, and it says homicide on King Road. It doesn't say how many people, it doesn't say who were killed, but you're essentially getting a confirmation that the people that were living in the house, there were deaths that occurred. And so, everyone that's just sitting out there, they talk about how they just like burst out crying. And then there was, I guess the University of Idaho alert is also called the Vandal alert. At some point, they did say 4 students were murdered. So again, at this point, people think that it's just Xana and Ethan, and then now it's confirmed that it's 4. So Kaylee and then Maddie. There was another friend that told, let's see. Oh, that's right. So apparently when Hunter went in Xana's room, I guess he noticed that there was wounds on Xana, there was blood and everywhere, and he says that it looks like it was some sort of attack. They were taken to the police department one by one, and they were interviewed. And essentially, they were asking each of the kids, like, hey, what did you guys do last night? Who would do something like this? And the kids all recap, like, oh, we did this, we did that. But they have no idea who would have done this. And it's actually really crazy because you start thinking about, okay, is it someone in our friend group? Is it someone that we could have known, could have passed? You probably start getting a little bit suspicious about the people who are around you. It goes to Madison's mom, and she gets to the police department, and she's sitting there in the room, and they confirmed that there was a homicide that occurred at her daughter's house, and there were 4 victims. Law enforcement breaks to them that Madison was a victim, Kaylee was a victim, and so were Ethan and Xana. They were unable to really give them any details at that point, just to tell them, hey, like, this is all we know, and we don't know what happened. We don't know how it happened or anything like that. But this is what people are wondering. They're wondering, how did these 4 students, how did they get murdered? They again reiterate that these kids are in college. They're supposed to be learning. They're supposed to be starting their lives. Something like this is not supposed to be happening at all. Which page am I on? Hey, Shirley, how are you doing today? How's it going? Ethan's parents also arrived as well around 9 p.m. They drove to the police station and they sat down with law enforcement. Again, this is where they talk about how the university rented a block of houses in this neighborhood, and that law enforcement took them to a hotel. So the university was saying how, okay, well, let's give these people hotels, and also the surrounding neighbors as well, because you don't know where the killer is. They could still be out there. A lot of people were, they felt like they weren't safe anymore living in King Street. So what the university did was they took the students and put them in the hotel, and I think they put the family members in there as well, I think. Ethan's family talks about how they just felt like they just didn't sleep at all for 4 days. They were wondering what happened. They were wondering, why did this happen to Ethan? And it's just really sad because everyone's just shocked. They don't know anything. There's like no news. They just know that their loved ones are just dead. The kids talk about how they were really, once they got to the hotel, that's when they just like cried everything out. They were just really, really shocked. They were so scared of going to bed that they would, any little noise that they would hear, they would kind of just like perk up a bit. Because again, you don't know if the killer is targeting maybe like certain group of people, certain friend group or family members. You don't know who could be next potentially. Law enforcement said that it was a target attack on a big group of friends. Again, they're wondering why them. And at this point, they're wondering, okay, well, were they stalked for months? If you have 4 of your friends that were murdered in your friend group, was a killer or killers, were they stalking just these 4 individuals, or were they stalking everyone else? No one had any idea whatsoever. So that was the end of episode 1. I would say episode 1 was just really heartbreaking because you can see all the emotions that the family members and the friends were going through, even though they're recollecting it 2-3 years later. I don't know when the interview happened. I don't know when they filmed this, but you could still see the devastation in their eyes. I feel like it was just very palpable. Then it starts with episode 2. So again, this is a 4-episode docuseries. So episode 2 starts with the news, and it covers 4 students were murdered. Class was canceled that day, and kids at that point, they weren't feeling safe. They were getting the fuck out of there because they're like, okay, well, there's a killer out on the loose. Is the killer targeting students? Is the killer, just targeting this friend group? What is going on over here? Law enforcement announced that they did not have anyone in custody. So again, you're wondering, could it be someone that is part of the friend group? Someone who's like nearby? Could it be someone who's part of the university? It goes to Madison's parents, again, Karen, Laramie, and Scott. And at this point, they're just grieving. They keep thinking, why? Why did this happen? How did this happen? And she talks about how she was stretching her imagination to make sense of what happened to her daughter. Then it goes over to Ethan's family, who live on Priest Lake, Idaho. It looks really beautiful, by the way, their house over there. And again, the Shaven family, they're all locking their doors now. And it just feels so weird to be in this house where there's no Ethan. The house just feels really quiet because, again, Ethan felt like he was like they felt like Ethan was like the leader of the family, he was the one that was, I guess, like corralling everyone. And he was maybe the one that was probably, I don't know, I guess like the person that was the most outgoing maybe. But they just felt like the house was just really, really quiet. They talk about how, it was just like really sad, and how they were crying, and how it felt so weird that you would spend like 20 years raising your kid, and then all of a sudden, very quickly, he's just gone. They did say that Moscow Police Department did call in every day to give them updates, but we knew at this point there really weren't any updates. I think the major update that we heard was when they were looking for that white Hyundai Elantra. Hunter, who again came across Ethan's and Xana's bodies, and Emily, they stayed at the Chapin's house. And at that point, they're trying to put in a timeline together to figure out where was everyone, what was everyone doing, because, even though you're not detectives yourself, it's like you're still going to try to participate and try to figure out, maybe there's something that I miss. Maybe there's something that I know that could contribute to possibly solving this case. Because again, you don't know who the hell did this. They talk about how, I think this was maybe, I don't know if this was the day before or the day of, but they were talking about how at the King Road house, they were partying, they were drinking all day. It says pick with M on K. I don't know what that means. Oh, there's a picture with Maddie on, I think, Kaylee's shoulders. That's on social media somewhere. Xana and Ethan, they went to, I think it's a football game. I just wrote game, so I don't know what kind of game it is. I'm assuming it's football. They talk about how Saturday, November 12th. So again, this is would have been the day. There was a fall formal where Maisie, again, Ethan's sister, she was like, she didn't really have a date. So Ethan was like, hey, I'll go with you. And so it's like really cute, And I feel like if you're like the parents, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to see my kids all get along with each other and all be so close to each other physically and then also emotionally as well. And she talks about how the last text message that she got from Ethan was "love you," which she thought was weird because she was like, "Oh, this is kind of weird." He usually doesn't really text anything like this. Maybe Ethan was drunk or something. Maybe he was feeling really emotional. But Ethan wanted to hang out with her. He's like, "Hey, come on out, hang out." She's like, "No, I'm going to bed. Okay, I'm going to bed." And he's like, "Okay, well, love you." And so that's actually really sweet. Like that's the last text that you get from your brother before he was murdered. 9 p.m. There was a Sigma Chi launch party. And so Sigma Chi, this is kind of interesting because I guess there's a group of people on the internet that were going after this. I think it's a fraternity. There was like theories about how they could have been a part of it. They could have done it. And there was like this one guy who goes into the fraternity building, and Sigma is like kind of like an E shape. And I guess Kai is like X, and he's like, oh, it's like Ethan and Xana. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of weird. But apparently Hunter Chapin was also at the party as well, because I think this is his fraternity, actually. He actually has like a room in the building here. I forgot what channel and streaming service is a docuseries on again. It's on Amazon Prime. So I don't know if you guys have Amazon Prime. I don't know if it's also like region locked as well, or if it's available in all parts of the world, but it is on Amazon Prime. All 4 episodes came out in one day on Friday. Hey, KK, how are you doing today? Coming in late, listening at 1.5. Oh, you could definitely do 1.5 because I think I'm speaking a lot slower today. Brian's eyebrows ran away and forgot to come back to court when he played. Guilty. Cannot imagine what the family's lives are like now. Yeah. It's very sad. But they talk about, there's an interview that they did on News Nation where they talk about the plea deal and the lives afterwards. So maybe we'll watch it together with you guys. Now, going back to the timeline. So again, 9 p.m. was when they had a Sigma Chi launch party. Ethan, Xana were there. Hunter Chapin was also there as well. It seems like he had a he had a room in the fraternity. At 1:40 a.m., Ethan and Xana went back. And then it goes to 1 a.m. with Maddie and Kaylee. Maddie and Kaylee were drinking at the Corner Club bar, and there were, I guess, speculations and rumors about the 1122 King Road house. There were rumors that, okay, well, who did this? Could have been someone at the fraternity party. Could have been someone at the bar and they saw Kaylee and Maddie together. And so there were rumors that were spreading that, 1122 King Road is a party house. It's actually like an open door policy. Anyone could just walk in and out at any time. It was a drug house. They were doing drugs there. Maybe people were dealing drugs as well. There was a rumor about how Ethan brought drugs that night and then he was murdered. Maybe they were killed because it was a robbery gone wrong. But the friend says that no, 112 King Road was not like that at all. It was a very safe space. We partied there with our small, close group of friends. And no, we didn't do drugs. So trying to dispel all the rumors there. Now, this is the part where I was just really surprised because they talk about how the family members and the friends were just getting harassed. Getting harassed by the media, I can see that happening. That seems kind of like part of the course where the media just wants to know what's going on. They're like, hey, do you know anything? Do you know what's happening with the investigation? How are you feeling about this? But when you're someone that's grieving, you probably don't want to deal with the media. You probably don't want to talk to the media, especially when it's so fresh, so new. But maybe there are some people who would. But the family members, they just felt like, we don't know anything. We don't know anything at all. We don't have any updates really from law enforcement other than just like daily call-ins, which has, they haven't really had anything come up in the investigation. But they said that they felt annoyed, pissed, and it was terrifying. It goes to, next person is Art. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Art Betej, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's Bettge. How would you pronounce that, y'all? But Art is the mayor of Moscow. So I was actually really surprised at how many people participated in this docuseries. Like I said, family members, friends, and then we had the mayor of Moscow, and then we had someone from the university also participate in this docuseries as well. But the mayor of Moscow, Idaho, talked about how the last homicide that happened here was 8 years ago. That is how how unoften murders happen in our town. Again, they said it was a very small town and that they were just not prepared for this level of attention. This is a major crime that happened in their small town. And initially, Art was the only one that was talking to the media. But at some point, he was probably like, no, I don't want to talk to the media anymore. I don't want to give any updates. Y'all go talk over to the law enforcement, okay? Leave me the fuck alone. All of a sudden, they have a news conference. At this news conference, law enforcement says that it was a homicide and it was a stabbing. They do not have the weapon in custody, though. Can you say that weapon in custody? Or is it only people that go into custody? People will go into custody, but weapons don't go into custody, right? Like evidence will go into custody. We have the evidence in our custody. I guess you can say that, right? This one part I did not know about. Have you guys ever seen that image on Reddit of the exterior of the 1122 King Road house where there was blood dripping on the outside? I feel like I remember hearing about it and I thought it was just like some fake internet shit, but apparently it's real. They mentioned this in this in the docuseries. I guess because the murders were so brutal and there was just so much, sorry, it's gonna get really kind of gruesome, but there was so much blood, it actually seeped through the flooring and I guess somehow seeped through into the exterior of the house. It's actually really, really creepy. If you ever see the picture on the internet, yeah. At this point, there was someone in the audience, one of the media, they were like, hey, how come 911 wasn't called until 12 o'clock p.m. the next day? And so, the law enforcement, they're like, we're not going to say anything about that. No, we're not going to say anything. But there was a question asked about the medical examiner, and the medical examiner did say that all four were stabbed with the same large knife. They don't mention the knife sheath. All right. So Ethan's parents, oh, no, wrong day. ER targeted a Maddie too. I think Koberger saw Maddie the Mad Greek and her name because of Elliot Rogers is why he fixated on her and her name. Poor kids, just a regular Saturday night. They never could have known it was coming. Sick. I agree, Aaron. I don't know. It's just so crazy because I'm trying to think of like when I was in my 20s, I was in college, you would go out, drink, have fun, you go to bed, pass out, eat like late night ramen, some cup noodles, some Lunchables, go to 7-Eleven, get some taquitos, and then you just go home and just pass out. Can you imagine just doing all that, passing out, and then you have some fucking weirdo in your fucking room targeting you while you're sleeping, one, and while you're intoxicated, two? Horrible. Oh. KK says, Corgi, not really, but your skin always looks amazing. It's the lighting. It's the camera. Please do a separate video on your skincare routine. I need to update mine. Paula's Choice. I have acne issues though, so Paula's Choice helps me keep my acne at bay. Yeah, the Paula's Choice has like a thing where you can go online and then you can do your skin. They'll like analyze you answer some questions and then they tell you which products they recommend. But yeah, it's just all Paula's Choice. Yeah, the blood was draining down the side of the foundation. Yeah, it was very, very, very creepy. Maybe Aaron, I didn't know Elliot stalked a Maddie too. We covered Elliot Rogers a little bit, but I don't remember all the details about that. Hell, I was making chocolate chip cookies on a hot plate during the late night alcohol munchies. Lol, that sounds really good. But yeah, it's just so crazy. I don't know. You're just in your 20s, doing your thing, and then some fucking creep comes in and just murders you. So sad. I can't imagine being a triple and losing one of your trip siblings. That's got to be a mine F. Yeah. Hey, Chrissy, how are you doing today? Hello. I think a Maddie was his first victim. I thought Elliot Rogers, didn't he invite some friends over to the apartment, basically luring them over and then murdered all four of them? Before he targeted, because I know that happened, and then he ended up targeting a sorority, right? Or something like that. All right, so then we go over to the Grub Truck live stream. Now, I remember when we were following this case, all of a sudden, we're like, oh shit, there's that Twitch stream. Grub Truck does a Twitch stream, I guess, whenever they're, maybe every weekend or every week or something like that. And they realize that Kaylee and Maddie are on there. And so everyone's like analyzing, the live stream to see if there's any weird, suspicious people, anything that could have happened. And then there was the first internet suspect, hoodie guy. Apparently, there was a guy in the hoodie, and when the girls left, I think he like kind of gestures at them and he runs towards them. Someone mentioned that one of the girls basically said like "fuck you" to him or something like that, but I didn't hear that. I didn't see that. But that was mentioned in the doc. Then we have a Blaine Eccles, who was the dean of student at the University of Idaho. What did he talk about? YouTuber, TikTok sleuths. I don't know if he talked about this or if the documentary went into this, but now we're going to get into all the different conspiracies, all the different suspects that the people thought who could have been involved in this. So again, they were pointing their fingers at the hoodie guy at the Grub Truck live stream. People were also pointing their fingers at the fraternity as well, Sigma Chi, where the party took place, where Ethan and Xana were at. Apparently there was a kid at Sigma Chi that was like the drunk driver, designated driver, not the drunk driver. That's a whole different one. He was like, seemed like a really nice kid. He's like, hey, I'll be the designated driver. Y'all get shit-faced drunk and I'll drive you guys to where you guys need to go. So that way you guys don't have to worry about driving, walking, being intoxicated, getting Uber because they were expensive back then and stuff like that. But yeah. So there was a kid that was like, hey, I'll drive you guys around and stuff like that. But apparently that kid got doxxed. Because people are like, he might have even been involved. He might have done this. But they doxed the shit out of that kid. There was also the wrist tie guy. They were looking into Hunter, not Ethan's brother Hunter, but Hunter, the friend that was there the next day. Hunter was known as the wrist tie guy because there's a body cam footage of Hunter coming out of the house and they're like, well, why the fuck is he wearing, I think he had like Ziploc ties on his wrist. They're like, why is he wearing that? That's so weird. What kind of weird shit are they into? And so one of the friends explained that like, oh, there's this drinking game we do where we zip tie people to each other and they have to finish their drink or something like that. I don't know. I've never played that zip tie, wrist tie game before, but college students, am I surprised? No, we get really creative into what kind of games we do. And we do really crazy, weird shit with drinking stuff. Okay. So Hunter and Emily, they were talking about how they were getting death threats like daily. People were pointing their fingers at them saying that they were essentially murderers. Roommates, again, were also blamed as well. Now, this is before we found out about the 911 transcript and then the details that came out from the court documents. But, people were blaming the roommates because it's like, well, why did you not check up on them until later on? Why did you wait until 12 o'clock to call 911? People thought it was like really weird. But at that point, we didn't know like the details of it because I think it got a lot worse for them. Again, they're pointing their fingers at the roommates saying, oh, the roommates were the killers. The roommates murdered them and that they're liars. And why were the roommates spared? Again, the docuseries goes through like the Instagram comments, goes through, TikTok videos, YouTube videos and stuff like that. They also blamed Maddie's boyfriend as well and said, oh, maybe it was Jake that did it. Jake is, when someone gets murdered, sometimes it's always like, your significant other or something like that. ER was so pathetic whining. It's not fair. Dude, we watched his videos. He's not even an ugly kid. He's a decent looking guy. His personality is just fucking ass, dude. He was the type of person that just wanted to blame the world for fucking everything. Just everything. Instead of looking to himself and taking accountability. Was he ever in therapy or anything like that? Did his parents ever take him to therapy? Yeah, that kid was just wild. Yeah, BK and E are basically one of the same. Wow, life is unfair. People make fun of me. People bully me. Blah 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 blah. I just feel like I don't know too much about Brian Koberger yet. I just don't know if I would consider Brian Koberger an ER because ER is very vocal about everything. Brian Koberger, I don't know if he's just like maybe he's more of just like a weirdo. I don't know if he treads into incel territory for me. I don't know if Brian Koberger was just like a guy who's just like fascinated with serial killers and then just wanted to just kill people. Elliot Rogers was like, oh, fuck women. Women and people don't want to be friends with me. I want to have a relationship with them and they think they're too good for me and all that stuff. With Brian Koberger, I don't know. I don't know if I see him as an Elliot Rogers. Maybe if more details come out. Thank you so much for liking the stream. I appreciate it. If you guys are enjoying the stream, hit the like button. This is so shocking to so many. No leads, no answers from the police. So many people were grasping at every theory, no matter how outlandish, for someone to blame. Yeah, I remember as each week passed by, I was like, fuck, dude, I hope it's not going to be a cold murder case. I hope they find answers. I like the drinking game of every time Rose said, Jack, you took a shot while watching what, Titanic? You know what really irks me? There are channels already trying to make him look like a victim. Thanks. I even slowed down from 2.0 to listen and write down Paula's choice. Yeah, Paula's choice worked for my acne. It was great. With that, and birth controls probably helps as well. All right. So law enforcement, they are getting tips about everyone. And law enforcement does a press conference where they're like, okay, let's start clearing people because these people are getting harassed. And so they address the rumors. I think they cleared the hoodie guy and they cleared, maybe some of the other people that were really close to the victims. They talk about how they had a vigil for the victims and, you're kind of scared to attend because you don't know if the killer is, one, still out there, and two, just trying to target students as a whole. And what if the killer shows up? Because we always hear about, when you're watching those like serial killer movies, TV show, it's like they always come back to the crime scene, or they always come back to be part of the investigation, or they always come back to the vigils because they just want to see, they want to see what kind of terror they put on upon these people and what kind of effect they had, and they just want to be, just be a part of it. And so they had a vigil at the university, I think, and security was like really tight. Some of the victims' family members had security detail following them around. There was the what's it called again when you walk through those security thing and then like basically checking to see if you have any guns or anything like that. But everyone was like scanned just to make sure that, no one's going to bring anything dangerous to the vigil. Stacy Chapin, she spoke. The Gonzalez family were there as well. And again, people are wondering, is the killer here right now? Is the killer here amongst us? People were scared that this was going to be a cold case. There was no suspect. The police cleared the food truck guy and the police cleared the friends. There was no suspect in custody. I have something about phone call here, but I don't know what that phone call note is about. That is the end of episode 2. So episode 2, we're basically just seeing the aftermath of everything and how it affected the family members, the friends, and then people who were pointing their fingers at possible suspects or suspect that could have been involved. Now we jump on to episode 3. It is December 30th and it's 47 days later. There's a press conference. They finally say, we got someone. And so everyone's like, who the fuck is this? Is it a random person? Like, what's going on? And so they find out that it is a random person to them in the friend group because they're like, well, we would never have guessed it was this guy. We don't even know who this guy is. This guy is he's not even like within our age range because I think Brian Koberger at this point, Brian Koberger was 28 years old. So the only details that we know about the suspect that was arrested was that he was 28 years old. His name is Brian Koberger. He was a graduate student at University of Washington, so the next state over. However, University of Washington, University of Idaho were about, maybe like 20 minutes apart. So everyone's wondering, who the fuck is this guy? Does anyone know him? Why is this guy from Pullman? Like, what's he doing over here? Why is he murdering people? And so we get some reactions. Ethan's family, they said that it felt like they can finally breathe again, that they were glad that they finally caught the person. Maddie's family said that it was like a nightmare that they were going through for the past 6 weeks. Brian Koberger was in Monroe County Corrections in Pennsylvania, and then he was transported over to Idaho. They talk about how Moscow, again, very small town. The moment that the suspect was arrested, everyone just felt like a sense of relief. They felt like there was a sense of pride that we finally caught someone and a little bit of celebratory as well. Now, the one thing that really kind of caught on to me was the fact that they felt like they were so relieved that it was not someone a part of their community. It was an outsider. They talk about, it's just an outsider from the East Coast. East Coast is where murders happen. So they're just really glad that it was just like, okay, it's not one of us. It's not one of us. It's just someone who's an outsider. They talked about how Brian Koberger, he was getting his PhD program in criminology at the University of Washington. Brian Koberger was also a teaching assistant, which is a little bit chilling because if you're someone who was in one of his classes, you interacted with him, it's like this guy is not just like some nobody. This is a guy who is around other young people, other students. And I wonder if he had issues with the students. And he's like, you know what? Fuck students. Fuck these kids. Fuck all these guys. And that's why he decided to target 4 students. not in University of Washington though, because he probably thought that, oh, I need to do it somewhere else, in a different state or something like that, not somewhere within, people that I interact with. And so Bryan Kohberger lived about 9 minutes away. And again, Pullman was just another college town nearby. Bryan Kohberger shows up for his initial court appearance, and Maddie's dad talks about how, he saw Bryan Kohberger coming in for the first time and how Bryan Kohberger was 8 feet away. The mom said that the dad was shaking so much, but she was like holding on to him because she was kind of afraid that the dad would just lurch over and just go after Bryan Kohberger, which, I wouldn't be surprised. Ethan's mom, she said that she won't attend the hearings, and even if they had a trial, she doesn't want to go to trial. I think Ethan's mom also shared the same sentiment as well for the sentencing. I don't think they're going to be attending. They talked about how there was a gag order that was put into place until the verdict comes out. Now, the interesting thing about this non-dissemination order, they are going to have a hearing, I think, in a day or two from now, where they're hoping to lift it. And so once that's lifted, I wonder if we're going to get access to some of the court documents that were sealed. I wonder if we're going to learn about more evidence against Bryan Kohberger. Again, everyone's wondering, who is this guy? Who the hell is he? Did he just become a killer overnight? What's his background? What's his history? It goes over to someone new in the docuseries, which is a person named Josh Ferraro. Josh said that he went to DeSales with Bryan Kohberger. They met in bio. What does that say? Bio rune? Bio something. I think they met in some sort of bio class. Bryan Kohberger was, that's right. Okay. So they met in bio class, and essentially there was a project and you had to go and pick your partners. And so everyone's getting around, getting up, they're picking their partners, and Bryan Kohberger is just like standing there, like awkwardly alone in a leather jacket. I'm like, a leather jacket? Was Bryan Kohberger trying to look cool or something like that? Like, I don't know, like wearing a leather jacket to university. Josh talks about how Bryan Kohberger is a very smart guy. He was very detail oriented, and it was actually a pleasure to work with Bryan Kohberger. I wonder if Bryan Kohberger did his fair share of the work, because sometimes when you do like group projects, that one person that like doesn't do shit, but then they're going to take credit anyways. Fucking annoying. There is a Brittany Slavin. Again, she also went to DeSales as well. She was also a psych major. So during this time, Bryan Kohberger was a psychology major, and it goes over his, actually, I think I copied, or I might have written down his resume. But Bryan Kohberger at this point, he was a psychology major, and she saw Bryan Kohberger as someone as like the smarter student. She also admitted to trying to cheat off his test. I'm like, girl, should you be admitting this? Because like, what if I don't know, what if someone you're trying to apply for a job or something, and they're like, oh, I recognize you. Are you the girl who tried to cheat off that guy's test? Like, I don't know. I thought it was funny that she admitted that. Bryan Kohberger, they said that he was a very lonely looking guy. The guy did the other guy, Josh, tried to invite Bryan Kohberger to a party, I guess, because sometimes you kind of feel bad. You're like, hey, I want to come to a party, you want to come hang out. Bryan Kohberger rejected going to the party, and he felt like Bryan Kohberger was kind of like an oddball type of character. Bryan Kohberger commuted to DeSales, and he had a very robotic-like quality to him. I think probably in how he spoke and his mannerisms, and he lacked human. I don't know what I wrote here, but probably he lacked like the human interactions. He probably, like I said, they felt like he was like a robot. And Josh did say that, well, I could see Bryan Kohberger doing it. There's a Catherine Ramslin. I don't think she was in this doc though. I think they just mentioned her. So at DeSales University, there's a professor that's like really well known in the criminal world. She studied serial killers, and essentially Catherine Ramslin would have this class that they all took where she would take a house and she would basically construct a crime scene, which is pretty cool. It's like a really hands-on thing. She would have the students go into the house and basically process it like a real crime scene. They would document the evidence left behind, and they would try to solve the crime themselves. They mentioned the Reddit survey that Bryan Kohberger put out. Basically, Bryan Kohberger wanted to find people to talk to. He wanted to know what was their motivation for committing crimes. They talk about Brian Koberger's, then they jump over to Brian Koberger's background. So Brian Koberger was raised in the mountain of Poconos. Apparently he was bullied a lot, that he was a loner kid. I'm not quite sure where they got this information because they didn't have anyone in the documentary that went to school with Brian Koberger during like elementary school, middle school, or high school to talk about this. But that's what they're sticking to. Brian Koberger was, again, going back to Brian Koberger holding his position as a TA at the University of Washington. The students found him off-putting and that his personality was just kind of weird. In the probable cause affidavit, that was released. So I remember we were all jumping on this because we wanted to know, what did they have on this guy? How did they find him? How did they hone down on him? The probable cause affidavit talks about the DNA. So the DNA that was left behind on the knife sheath. And again, they were able to match his DNA because they went through Brian Koberger's family's trash and found like a Q-tip that belonged to his that his dad used or something, and was able to determine that the DNA on the Q-tip DNA of the Q-tip was a is it paternal DNA to the DNA found on the knife sheath. They also went through the phone, the phone locations, and then the vehicle matching as well, the white Hyundai. Now in the docuseries, they're going to talk about the timeline. So timeline of before the murders, during the murders, and then the after the murders. They talk about how Brian Koberger leaves his Washington apartment. 2:47 a.m., he turns off his phone. However, before 3:30 a.m., the car on the surveillance passes King Road. Between 4 to 4:25 is when they think the murders happen. At 4:20 is when the car speeds off. I wonder why they say 4 to 4:25 if the car speeds off at 4:20 on the surveillance. I don't know. But we see a white car speeding off away from the King Road house. And at 4:48 a.m. is when Brian Koberger's phone gets back on the network again. However, instead of driving, it's kind of like a Wendy Adelson thing, right? Instead of like going from here to here, it's like, I'm going to go all the way down here to go up here. It's like, why would you take that drive right there? Are you trying to avoid the major highways? Are you trying to avoid cameras? Are you trying to take the back roads because there's less people on there to spot you potentially? That's what I'm thinking. So again, Brian Koberger doesn't drive on the main highway. He drives south through residential areas, which I'm like, is that a good idea? Because there's probably a lot of people nowadays have security footage and stuff like that. Oh, is it Taco Tuesday today? Oh, happy Taco Tuesday. That sounds really yummy. They talked about him being bullied not long after he was arrested. An ex-girlfriend or a girl who was a friend spoke out after the arrest. If he was a health nut, he didn't look like one. Apparently, from what I've heard, now it's like kind of hard to filter out what's rumors and then what was actually verified on some of the documentaries or court documents. But from what we heard was Brian Koberger used to be really big and he was bullied for that. At some point, he got into drugs, heroin, was an addict, and then he wanted to clean up his life, and then he became like vegan, trying to be really healthy. All right, so 5:30 a.m., Brian Koberger returns to Pullman. Now, this is a new thing that came into my mind, and I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Because remember, at 9:15 a.m., they believe that Brian Koberger came back to the crime scene. And when I was watching this docuseries, I was like, wait a second. I wonder if he went back to the crime scene to try to get the knife sheath. I wonder if he went home, was like, oh yeah, I did it. And then was like, where's all my shit? Oh my God, where's the knife sheath? And that's why he drove back. Maybe because I thought he drove back to kind of gloat to see if there's law enforcement that responded to what he did. But now it could make sense that if he went back at 9:15 a.m., he was like, oh shit, I don't have the knife sheath with me. Should I go back and go get it? Later on in the docuseries, there's someone that actually mentioned this, was like, oh, I wonder if he went back for the knife sheath. So I was like, oh, I completely didn't even think about this. They talk about November 18, 5 days later. Brian Koberger changes his registration for his vehicle from Pennsylvania to Washington. People were saying that, oh, I wonder if this is done because in Pennsylvania, usually in the East Coast, I don't know why this is a West Coast thing, but usually in the East Coast, you're required to have a front license plate. Okay, front license plate, back license plate. However, it seems like some states in the West Coast, you don't need a front license plate. I'm like, why? Get plates on front and back. November 28th, at this point, it is 15 days later. They say that they have a vehicle of interest. The law enforcement, they put out an alert for a bolo, which is a be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra. Now, what's interesting is that, remember, initially they were looking for a 2011, 2013 Hyundai Elantra. And so someone in the doc said that they were driving around. I think maybe it was like a school security or something like that. But they work for the school. They were driving around, this is, I think either University of Washington or where the apartments where Brian Koberger lived, but they did spot a white Hyundai Elantra, and they were going to file like an incident report. Oh, they did spot a white Hyundai Elantra because in their system, apparently there was an incident report with a police officer. I think Brian Koberger was pulled over because of, I think he turned in the intersection when the light had already turned red or something like that. So they were going to submit this to the police as a lead, but they didn't because they're like, oh, well, police is only looking for a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. I think Brian Koberger had maybe a 2015 or 2016 Hyundai Elantra. So that is why Brian Koberger his vehicle was never initially submitted into the system. Crazy. Christine Cameron. Okay, so we're going to start getting into some of the Elliot Rodger stuff and some of the, the reason why they think Brian Koberger was on the University of Idaho Facebook page, but posing as someone named Papa Roger. I don't know if I'm really convinced that that could be Brian Koberger, but it starts getting a little more convincing afterwards. So Christine Cameron, she is the admin for the Idaho 4 page. And there's a weird guy named Papa Roger who started posting. And he would say weird shit like, oh, I wonder how the knife was held. I wonder which hand was used to stab. And so these are like kind of like inquisitive questions, but at the same time, kind of like, I don't know, kind of like weird. Christine Cameron also manages other pages as well. They are people that are online. They try to solve crimes. I think there was at least 225. I think it was like, a 250,000 people following this page, I think. Again, they go back to the questionnaire on Brian Koberger, and they're saying that, okay, if you look at Brian Koberger's questionnaire that he posted, the one that's on Reddit now, it's very similar to what Papa Roger was asking. For example, in the questionnaire, Brian Koberger wrote, how did killer leave this? In the questionnaire, Brian Koberger wrote, how did you leave the scene? Papa Roger wrote, how did killer leave the scene? Which I'm like, that seems like a generic question. I don't know if I'm convinced. Brian Koberger's questionnaire said, before leaving, is there anything else you did? I think Papa Roger wrote, did you clean up at all? Or something like that. I don't know. I just felt like it was kind of similar, but not enough to convince me that it was the same person. Apparently, the first post, whose first post of this? First post of the evidence release, the murder weapon. Let's see. Let me try to dissect this. First post of the evidence release, the murder weapon has been a consistent as a large fixed knife blade. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. The evidence released prior to 2 autopsies. So I think this is a post that the Papa Roger guy wrote, and they're saying that how did this person know about the large knife, and how did they know that they possibly had a sheath? Is it because it's Brian Koberger? December 13th, something about a gas station. A white sedan drove by. No idea. Oh, December 13th, I think they report seeing a white sedan or something like that. Papa Roger was saying that the white Elantra was a red herring. So maybe it's Brian Koberger trying to say like, oh, don't believe the white Hyundai thing. It's fake. December 12th, at this point, it's 29 days after the murders. Brian Koberger's dad flew in to drive with Brian Koberger across the country during winter break. Brian Koberger was pulled over twice, I think, for following too closely. We do have the body cam footage of that. A lot of people are wondering, why would Brian Koberger's dad drive all the way across the country? Because one, that's very time consuming. Two, very expensive because gas, and what if your car breaks down? And it's not like you're driving from one state to another. You're driving from like one state to another state to another state to another state, all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast. That is a long fucking drive to do a cross-country trip from the West Coast to the East Coast. So people are like, oh, I wonder if Brian Koberger's dad knew something. All right. Then the police chief, hard to pronounce that word. A police chief talks about how they recognize Brian Koberger. This is a police chief of Pullman at the time. And he was like, you know what? Brian Koberger came in on at some point because he was interested in the research and assistance program. And so this is where they looked at Brian Koberger's resume. In his research interests, at the very top of his resume, he lists that his interest was the causes of violent crime. He lists his education. Again, he majored in psychology in at DeSales, and then when he went to University of Washington, he was trying to get his PhD in criminology. He said that Brian Koberger during the interview was just really awkward and that his communication style was not fluid at all, that he stuttered a lot, which could also, be due to someone that's really nervous for a job interview. But he did feel that Brian Koberger would fall short in an area of trust because when you're working this line of, in this field, you have to be able to trust your people. You have to be able to, I think that's in any field, to be honest, though. And he just felt like, Brian Koberger just doesn't seem like a person that people can just trust, and that he just didn't get the job. They talk about the single source of DNA that was found on the knife sheath. So this is when they do the investigative genetic genealogy, where they took the DNA on the knife sheath and they're comparing it to the public. And so these databases, technically, there's this whole thing that Ann Taylor will tell you about how, the government, they were not supposed to access these databases to compare the DNA, but they did it anyways. This whole thing about that. And so they were able to pinpoint to the Koberger family. And when they wanted to get a comparative DNA, they went through the trash at the Koberger's family's house. They found a Q-tip, and the Q-tip had the dad's DNA on it, which would show that his DNA fathered the DNA of the DNA on the knife sheath. December 30th, again, 47 days after the murders, the search warrant was executed to search Brian Koberger's office and his Washington apartment. I think by this point, though, I think he was already fired by University of Washington. They will talk about the timeline of that. Brian Koberger was arrested. He was wearing gloves and he was throwing trash away in the bag. Now, remember, they were supposed to do a knock before they would execute their search warrant. But the reason why they did a no knock was because they were like, oh, these are under exigent circumstances. We think he might be doing something to kind of get rid of the evidence. We need to get into the house ASAP. This was his parents' Pennsylvania house. They went through Brian Koberger's apartment and they said that the apartment was vacant. There was no clothes there. It seems like the person was never planning on ever coming back to the apartment ever again. I don't know if Brian Koberger just didn't own a lot of shit or if there was that intention. Like, we're not ever coming back here ever again. Because, Brian Koberger just started University of Washington. He still had, another semester and then, subsequent years to finish getting his criminology degree. It goes back to the lady that runs the Facebook group for the Idaho 4 murders. She said that Papa Roger was gone, not posting anymore. His Facebook page completely disappeared. So again, she is alluding to Brian Koberger being the person of that who authored that account. Brian Koberger's mugshot and this part, I don't know, man. She was comparing Brian Koberger's mugshot as like a side view of him. Papa Roger's profile picture had a side view of this like old man, and she's like, if you look at the picture side by side, it kind of looks similar. It's like, yeah, it's two dudes with the side, but it's like a side profile shot. Like, I don't know. That's just, that's a little conspiratorial to me. But the fact that the Papa Roger profile was gone when the Brian Koberger was about to be arrested, maybe it was him. But yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't super convinced. Hunter's the one that came across the victims at the house. He thought, now that Brian Koberger has been caught, maybe their lives will return to normal. However, he was like, nope, I was completely wrong. Life would never be the same again. And actually, they end up getting more attention than anything. May 2023, Brian Koberger has his arraignment hearing, and that's where he is completely silent. We don't hear from him. The judge enters a non-guilty plea for him, which I remember I was really confused. I was like, wait a second, why wouldn't you just say that you're not guilty? Why would you not say anything in your arraignment hearing? I wonder if Brian Koberger was trying to like fess up to the crimes, and then maybe he was told that like, hey, let's just go through the court system. Let's see what kind of evidence we can throw out, and let's just try to, get through this. I don't know, because it's kind of interesting how at your arraignment you wouldn't say you're not guilty. So I don't know if there's like some sort of like tactic to that. I don't know. That's the end of episode 3. So we're now on the last episode, episode 4. Episode 4, I wrote PM. What is PM? PM. Oh, we're going to focus on Dylan now. Dylan is the roommate. So Dylan was never on the docuseries. Same thing with the other roommate. She's not part of the docuseries as well, but the friend, I guess she talked to Dylan and she's basically just relaying what Dylan told her or what she probably found out through the news or something. I don't know. I'm just making that assumption. I don't know if they're even like close right now, but she essentially was recapping what happened to Dylan, and Dylan said that she heard Maddie and Kaylee come home and that apparently they were chatting on the couch for a while. Now, this is kind of different than what I remember how the judge, when the judge was recapping some of the parts of the timeline, the judge mentioned that the girls were like trying to go out and then they were all supposed to go out to eat at the grub truck together, but they changed their mind because it was too late or something like that. I don't know if this still falls into the same timeline. To me, it seems like the details are a little bit different. Anyway, so she's like, Dylan, she was drinking, I think, all day, and she's basically trying to sleep through the noise. Everyone in the house was asleep except for Xana, because again, Xana had the 4 a.m. DoorDash order, and Xana's phone did show at 4:12 that she was on TikTok. The car comes in at 4:05. It turns and then it parks. Dylan says that she heard a commotion, that someone's here. She heard a commotion, and she basically heard someone say, "Hey, someone's here." And then she heard crying, and then she heard someone say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Dylan opens the door, and then the guy with the bushy eyebrows walks by, and then he leaves. He goes through the sliding door, and then he closes it. Dylan tries calling everyone. No one answers. And so the only person that's responding at this point is Bethany, the other roommate that was on the basement floor. And so that's when Dylan runs to Bethany's room in the basement. And Dylan's thinking, I probably just imagined it. It's probably just me. However, in the morning, Dylan must have realized that no, it couldn't have been a dream. It must have actually happened for real. And so Dylan calls Emily and says that, again, something weird happened last night. I thought it was a dream. I'm not sure, but I think something happened. And so she tried calling, again, everyone in the house. No one's answering at this point. So on the second floor, we have Xana and Ethan. They're dead. That's where Dylan's room was. On the third floor is where Maddie and Kaylee were. I have someone named Josie Lawturn. I don't know if that's Emily's friend, maybe. I think at this point, they're kind of having theories about Brian Koberger. Could they have somehow met Brian Kober somewhere in passing, somewhere in the past before, where they stalked? And they thought it was really weird because it seems like this friend group is kind of close with each other and they don't really hang out with outsiders. It talks about the incel theory. So could Brian Koberger done it because he hated women? Oh, I think there was a girl that talked about Brian Koberger. I don't know if that's Josie Lawturn. Sorry, I have like arrows on here and I don't know what happened. But apparently there was a girl that was on the docuseries and she talks about how she went to the movies with Brian Koberger, but he was being really fucking weird. Like he kept tickling her. I don't know. That's like so weird. Imagine like going on a first date with someone and they're like trying to tickle you. I'm like, ew, first of all, you're being a creep. You're trying to touch me and stop fucking doing that. I'm like being tickled. And so the girl told Brian Koberger, hey, like stop tickling me. And so Brian Koberger all of a sudden got really serious. And so luckily she ends the night and that's it from Brian Koberger. However, she talked about how she got a message from Brian Koberger. And I don't know if this is just like an out of the blue message or if they were messaging back and forth. But Brian Koberger told her that she had good birthing hips. And kind of weird to hear that. I've said that before to my friends as a joke, but to get it from a guy that you went on a first date with and you probably have no intentions of ever meeting them ever fucking again, like for them to message you like, oh, you have good birthing hips, like, dude, that's fucking weird and creepy and like not only were you trying to fucking tickle me earlier, now you're telling me I have good birthing hips. Really fucking weird. They go over to the News Nation news coverage about this, and News Nation talks about a timeline with Brian Koberger and the drama that he has at the university. Apparently, on September 23rd, so this is 2 months before the murders happened, Brian has a altercation with a professor. I don't know if, I'm assuming it's not physical, because it's physical, you're probably getting dragged out and you're probably being let go right away. But it just says altercation with professor, so maybe like a verbal thing. On October 3rd, so a couple weeks after, or maybe a week or two after that, they have a meeting with Brian Koberger and to discuss his professional behavior. October 21st, there's an email that discusses Brian Koberger's failure to meet expectations. November 2nd, they have a meeting to, have an improvement plan for Brian Koberger. Like, hey, you're failing in X, Y, and Z. Here's how we're going to improve, and here's how we're going to help you. After the murders, December 7th, there's a meeting on to see how the improvement plan was going. Like, are you improving? How are you doing? However, on December 9th, so 2 days after the improvement plan update, there's a second altercation with the professor. I don't know if it's with the same professor or a different professor. I would like to hear more about what's happening here. Any of the professors out there, can you tell us what happened? There's a second altercation with the professor, and then 20 days after that, or 10 days after that, he was finally terminated from University of Washington. So I wonder if he was like, you know what, fuck University of Washington. I was terminated. I'm not coming back again. I'm going to clean out my apartment, get the hell out of here. I don't know. Because, like I mentioned earlier, law enforcement said that it seems like they completely cleared out the house and seemed like they didn't have any intentions on coming back ever again. Going back to Brian Koberger's classmates, they studied Ted Bundy. The curriculum also studied Elliot Rodger, Ed Kemper. But it seemed like the classmates said that Brian Koberger seemed to be unbothered by Elliot Rodger's actions. They didn't really kind of go into more detail about that, but they just made that comment. They make a comparison with Elliot Rodger and Papa Rodger. So I think maybe trying to say that Brian Koberger had a fascination with Elliot Rodger and then, created that Facebook name, Papa Rodger. But I mean, Papa Rodger could just be a random person who could be an incel and then just wanted to be a part of this Facebook group just to like throw shit in there and just be like kind of like a troll. Family at this point were felt like they were very frustrated with the legal system. They felt like the defense were just trying to buy more time with all the delays, and that they were just trying to do everything they can to find loopholes. So, I mean, I can understand the sentiment because remember, they wanted to throw out the investigative genetic genealogy. They wanted to throw out the search warrants. They wanted to throw out, getting the Q-tip from the trash can because they were saying that like, oh, well, the trash can. Sorry, the property, the trash was still on the property of the house, and it was part of like a gated neighborhood. Blah blah blah. So I mean that's typical, right? That's normal when you see like defense attorneys. They try to do everything they can to throw things out on the technicality or things that are just illegal, or they're doing everything they can to advocate for their client. Conspiracy. So after the conspiracy, after the arrest, there was a conspiracy. Like, so it's kind of weird because like even after Brian Koberger was arrested, people were still, peddling all these conspiracies. There was one that talked about how Hunter, and I think Emily are dating. They were saying that like, well, Hunter was having an affair with Kaylee, and that's the reason why Kaylee was murdered, because something happened on the side. That ended up not being true. This part was really sad. I didn't write a lot of notes because it's more just like processing and just like watching it. But Ethan's family were talking about how they're trying to find a place for him, to be at, and that I don't really know. I'm assuming they cremated him and they're just trying to figure out where to put his urn, maybe. But they were talking about like, we didn't know where to put him. We didn't want to just put him at like a crematorium. We didn't want to just put him at like a cemetery or something. And so they are still holding on to him. And they said that, we'll wait until one of the parents pass and then we'll have him, either be buried or be put together with the parents. Because I guess as a parent, it's really hard to find out, or figure out where am I going to put my child that died before me. They did say that they felt like, Ethan is safe now, which is like, I don't know, it was like really sad. The way they said it was just like really sad, super heartbreaking. They're just like, he's safe. I think the dad mentioned that, he goes to the basement and talks to Ethan, pretty often. And yeah, it's just super sad to see the aftermath of everything and how all the family members are dealing with it. Hey, Shanzo, how are you doing today? How's it going? Maddie's mom talks about how she went to get some of the stuff back from the house, but not everything. I think it was just probably too sad for her to go back there. She was able to grab one of the sweatshirts that Maddie wore that said Idaho on it. And she was talking about the story how, Maddie was trying to find the sweatshirt. The mom was there and they were unable to find her size, but then the mom was able to find it at a different location. And they were like really excited. But then like she took the shirt and like cut it up and the mom just didn't understand. But like teenage things, right? When you're young, you want to like make your clothes look cooler and stuff like that. This is how the kids wear it. And the mom was saying that, like, I'm so glad I got this sweatshirt back. And, I'm assuming the sweatshirt probably still smells like her daughter. She mentioned how the sleeves were still rolled up. And so she was just really happy to have that sweatshirt. I think. Oh, so this part. Again, now I understand why the university decided to tear down the house. So one of the friends mentioned how, she has a house in that same neighborhood and in her bedroom actually faces the 1122 King Road house. And every time she goes out of the window, she could see it, it's like boarded up. There's like caution tape around it. And then Ethan's brother, Hunter, who has a room at the fraternity, where his bedroom is situated in the house, it faces the 1122 King Road house. So again, he looks out the fucking window and he sees the fucking house out there every fucking day. And it's just a really sad reminder of what happened to your brother, what happened to your family, and everything that you're going through right now. And then they talk about demoing the house, and the house is like finally done. So that's pretty much about it for episode 4. That's pretty much about it for at the end. I recommend you guys to check it out. I think at the very end, they talk about how Ethan's family made a foundation for him, basically helping, I think it was like helping students, helping them pay for their education, something like that. And then there's a separate foundation with the 3 girls for Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie. And that's pretty much where it ends at. But I thought it was really good. It was very, very emotional. I thought it was nice for them to focus on the family members, the friends, to see what they were going through. Because typically when you watch, things like this, it's always just like very killer centric. It's like, oh, what we need to know more about this killer, more about the background, more about the history. But then you also forget about how, the killer's actions affected other people around. Because you would just think that like, okay, well, the victims, they're being, they're being praised by the public. They're being, kind of like seen as like, oh, wow, we feel so sad for you. We're so sorry this has happened to you. But then there's the other side of the public that, are attacking the victims, families, friends, going after them, harassing them. I think it also ends with the family members, like, for example, the younger ones talking about how, they're not even on social media anymore. Like they can't even fathom scrolling on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram because they'll see the messages, they'll see people attacking them, or they'll see people covering this and in a way that is like, very conspiratorial, and that they're pointing fingers at these people. And so they talk about how like, like my Instagram is private, or I don't even have social media anymore. And so it's really crazy because social media is a huge part of our lives, especially when you're in your 20s, early 20s, I can imagine like being something that everyone uses. So it'd be weird that you're not using it yourself. So, but I would understand. It's like, fuck social media. Oh, do you see him? He's wearing his cone right now. Poor Bubble. Puppy alert. But again, this docuseries is 4 episodes. I think each episode was like 45 minutes to an hour long. It's on Amazon if you have Amazon. I don't know if this is available in all the regions. So I wanted to recap for you guys and for you guys to kind of get a feel of how the family members felt through everything and what they were going through. Because I don't know, it's just really sad. It's like you're not only are you dealing with someone that you love that passed away, you're dealing with all the crazy shit that's happening out in the public as well. Social media can destroy lives when you're a collateral victim. I mean, once they have a defendant, victims' names are often forgotten. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The huge focus is on, Brian Koberger, what he did and all that stuff, because it is his trial at the end of the day. And then the family members do get forgotten. The victims do get forgotten sometimes. Shiro, yeah, he's going to be in a cone for about 2 to 8 weeks. He's got the scratch on his eye. And someone in the chat was telling me yesterday that having a corneal abrasion feels like you have sand in your eye constantly. It's like really painful. So I reached out to the doctor, and we actually have medication for him to take if he starts trying to, like, hit at it again. But I'm going to give it to him just in case, because I think it's probably bothering him, but he just can't scratch it. But yeah, poor Bubba. He's right here. Oh, I did want to watch this with you guys before we go, because again, a lot of the family members have not been very vocal in the public, but I think News Nation recently had Ethan's family on there talking about the plea deal, and then talking about whether or not they're going to show up to the sentencing. Let me see. History. Oops. Oh, shit. Was it News Nation? I think it was News Nation. Yes, Nacho Corgi. Yeah. I definitely know of Nacho Corgi. He's so cute. I think my friends know Nacho Corgi, actually. Oh man, I feel like my throat is like. We'll go through my history. Chapin? Victims. Oh, right here. Oh, this is Today's Show.
After the murder of their son Ethan, Stacy.
Let me get the. Let me see. Hopefully the transcripts are. No, I don't know if the transcript is going to be correct or not. Okay, I'm gonna read it just in case. I think it's probably fine to play it, but we're just erring on the side of caution for a little bit. If you know, you know. So they were part of the doc. These are Ethan's parents. His dad, mom, Jim, and Stacy. Oh, they say his name is John, but I think he goes by Jim. When you heard this plea deal was going through, what was your reaction? If I could have physically do a handstand at the time, says the mom, I would do one because I'm so ready for it to be done.
About it with prosecutors. And for us, we always felt like this was a better deal. I mean, he gets put away and there's no appeal system to it. And there were so many kids, including our own, that had been subpoenaed that no longer have this hanging over their heads. I mean, we just all get to go live our life.
And then she also mentioned that her initial response was an eye for an eye, but, it goes through the rest of what she said afterwards. Like an eye for an eye, but at some point it's like, well, you got to think about the people that are alive now, alive today. There's still other, kids that are involved, and, you want to think about them too. The victims' friends, the people that were the roommates, the family members. The captions are so off, though. Why? The reporter says there are many family members that feel like Bryan Kohberger won't face the highest form of punishment. The family say that everyone's entitled to grieve and feel how they want. It is not just how we feel. Jim says, I don't really care what happens to the guy. He's off the street and he can't hurt any more kids. That's the most important thing. The reporter asks, they saw their son's killer in person for the first time. It was a cold and calculated and weirdly like an automated phone message. I mean, it was like, expected some, I don't know, remorse, emotion, something. There was zero. Yeah, that's what I said about Bryan Kohberger at the plea change hearing. The reporter says Ethan's family say their focus now is on the amazing person that he was, his parents, and for the first time, his triplet siblings, sharing their story in a documentary about what happened. It recaps some parts of the documentary series. Reporter, what do you hope people take away? They say, what great kids they were. We made a decision as a family that we would tell our version of Ethan's story one time. He was an amazing kid, and it's reflected in that. Reporter, the Chapins also started a foundation so far, providing more than $100K in scholarships to students. The family finding ways to feel his presence and make sure that he's never forgotten. They all went and they all got tattoos. It's a note that he wrote. I don't know. He was probably in 4th grade. Oh, this is kind of cute. She got like a tattoo. Imagine like a mom getting a tattoo. It says, "I love you, Mom Ethan." So cute, so sweet. Keep everything that your kids make. Yeah, they all want to get a tattoo, but you know, they're fine with the plea deal. Seems like they're really happy with it. They don't have to sit there in court in trial, deal with all the legal process for years to come. An eye for an eye makes the world blind. Hey, Iman. Yeah, I've heard of that before. I respect all the families and their very different feelings about how this is ended. I can understand all the different ways of grieving. Agree, Aaron. I'm disturbed by it, and I was not impacted by these events. These parents and friends have been through enough. Yeah. I hope in some ways for them speaking and just getting it out to the public helps them in their healing journeys. Me too. I think it really helped for them to participate in the docuseries as well. Because like I said, I think the docuseries did a pretty good job at getting their aspects out, what they went through, and then we're able to talk more about their kids' lives and what great people they were and what great people they were supposed to be, but their life was taken away way too quick. You're a VTuber. I still don't know what case they were talking about. China case. Oh my god. That looks nothing like me. Cute though. I think it thought I had short hair because of how my hair is. That's so cute. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. All right, y'all. Well, that is it for today. I just wanted to cover the 4-episode docuseries. Check it out. Do you guys have Amazon Prime? Or if you don't have Amazon Prime, I gotcha. I did my best trying to summarize everything, but towards the end of episode 4, it was getting so emotional. It was just hard to write, and I was just taking it all in. So I would say especially watch episode 4 towards the end. It really recaps all the family members and how they felt about everything and social media and how it impacted them. So yesterday I posted a video of Donna Adelson, and I'm going to post a video about Donna Adelson today. Essentially the hearing that we covered last Friday. So if you guys already watched the stream, don't watch it then, because you guys already saw it. But then if you didn't watch the stream yesterday, we are going to make videos, and then we're just going to, basically section them all out. I think I still have to post the Corey Richards 26 charges that she was hit with, and I think that's it. Yeah, Corey Richards and the Donna Adelson should come out today, and then I'll probably edit this a little bit, and then we'll post this. All right, y'all? Well, I hope you guys have a good one. I hope you guys take care. And hopefully by the time you see me tomorrow, I will have a new rug. My rug is downstairs. I just got to set it all up. It's just been heavy. I was going to carry the rug upstairs by myself, and I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to hurt my back. Bye, Joe. Bye, Moondog. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you guys have a good one. Oh, thank you so much for the 34 likes. I appreciate it. Thank you. Y'all are too kind. I will see you guys later. For sure, I will see you guys next week. I will be streaming in a different area, so hopefully, please, will be smooth. We made sure the internet was good, but we're going to be out of town next week, but I'm going to be streaming elsewhere. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I will see you guys for Koberger sentencing and Lori Vallow sentencing. And if there's anything else that pops up, we will be covering it as well. I got all the access to the Sarah Boone stuff. I might take a look at it. Maybe I'll cover it with you guys. But I really just wanted to look at it just because I was just, kind of curious what's going on with the Sarah Boone family shit. I don't know. Apparently, they're they're fighting it out right now. I don't know if there's a resolution yet. I just haven't taken a look at it. So maybe I'll cover it with you guys. Maybe I won't. We'll see. Yeah, you too. Have a great rest of